Welcome to my project proposal for Unit 6 Specialist Creative Outcome. My name's Naomi Quinn and I'm currently working on the UAL Extended Diploma in Creative Practice, Art Design and Communication. I'm planning on studying Fine Art at Falmouth University in September, so this is the last project I'll be doing for my current course. I began this unit with the question, why is imagination and make-believe important? Growing up, fiction played a huge part in my day-to-day, watching films about wizards and their magical schools, hobbits, dwarves and elves going on great adventures, and teenagers fighting for justice in dystopian societies. A lot of these films were based on books. I've only recently started properly reading fantasy books, but I got so immersed and invested in these imaginary worlds, and it was a great distraction from unpleasant thoughts and emotions. I find that fantasy is often viewed as childish and not worth reading because you're not learning anything, but I don't think that's true. I think you can learn a lot from the characters, their ambition, their courage, and how they navigate difficult situations. The stories often encourage standing up for what's right, like fighting discrimination or corrupt leadership. The intricate world building inspires creativity, whether you go on to make up your own stories and creatures or draw fan art that brings the community together. And I think it can improve people's mental health by providing a temporary escape from what can be a very stressful reality. I plan to make a large painting in oils or acrylic paint that can represent this idea of healthy escapism and why we mustn't lose our imagination. I've been reading articles, research papers, and watching TED Talks on fantasy literature and why it's vulnerable to censorship, how fiction inspires innovation, and the concept of healthy escapism. I made mood boards and looked into a variety of artists' work that I found inspiring or that related to the fantasy aesthetic, like Olivia Rose James's black and white paintings inspired by popular fantasy books and mythology, or Sandara Tang's digital illustrations of mythical creatures. I did a few artist responses to see how I liked the style and process. I discovered I wasn't a big fan of painting clouds and I missed using fun colours, but I liked painting this woodland river scene inspired by Daniel Ablett. Daniel Ablett is one of the three artists that has particularly influenced the direction of my final piece, along with Sandara Tang and Katerina Soskova-Bridovkova. I especially like the colour palettes they use and the river landscapes. I also visited the National Portrait Gallery and the Tate Modern in London for primary research, and I attended workshops with illustrator Callum Heath and graphic designer Charlotte Humphreys. These were super fun experiences and I learnt a lot, but what I found most useful for this project was talking through my concept with Charlotte Humphreys after the workshops. It was great to get a fresh perspective on my work and hear about her relationship with fantasy fiction. Next, I plan to conduct some market research to get some feedback on my designs for the final piece, and hear other people's take on the topic. Do they read fantasy? What do they like about it? And do they think it's beneficial or a waste of time? I will also be gathering some primary research by sketching, painting and photographing the landscape and greenery on my next trip to the National Park in Split, Croatia. I did this quick mock-up in gouache, experimenting with the scenery of my painting. I like the look of the river and big trees with winding roots, kind of like mangrove trees. I did some idea generation exercises, like here where I turn these ink splotches into whatever I saw, like this little mouse on its way to his hobbit hole-esque house, or this creature hiding in a cave by a waterfall. I did the same thing with some wiggly lines and ended up really liking these two sketches. I wanted to develop this idea of a dragon not so subtly camouflaged in a tree, and a person in a boat too distracted or dissociated to notice it. I experimented a bit more with this composition, playing with the idea that the guy in the boat is staring at his phone, mindlessly scrolling or reading the latest breaking news. He's so glued to it that he forgets to take in his magical surroundings and doesn't allow himself to even imagine the fantastical creatures that could be lurking around. I like this one where there's also a child in the boat that can see the dragon, representing the imagination and creativity the kid has that the man, maybe his dad or maybe his future self, has let go of, consumed by the overload of information on his phone. I would like to develop these further and try out some other concepts and compositions after I've done some market research and visited the national park, because I'd love to base the scenery on the landscape and waterfalls there. Unfortunately, paint isn't very environmentally friendly, but I'll do my best to not create any waste. My painting will be displayed in the college's end-of-year exhibition and potentially stay up for a few months to a year afterwards, so my audience will be mostly students, but also their families, tutors and other staff, so I want my piece to be meaningful to a wide range of people. My genuine intention with this project is to remind people that it's okay to find comfort in creative activities, like getting super invested in a fantasy book, film or game. I want my painting to provide a momentary escape for the viewers when life gets a little bit too overwhelming. Make believe or not, if it brings you happiness, I think it's worth it.